Hello.
Hi, if you like this podcast, we've got a website, grandpodcast.com, where you can go and subscribe. We've also got a Patreon, patreon.com/grandpodcast, where you can go and give us $1 a month. You can also support our enterprises. If you go to goodtohear.co.uk/free, you can get my book that I made to try and make you sign up to my mailing list about tracking happiness. Ivanka, hi. What do you reckon people could do if they like it?
People could, if they like it, they could definitely go to the website. They could also write us some reviews and ratings, tell their friends, that kind of thing. Be nice. Send us an email.
hello@grandpodcast.com.
Hello.
Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly remote Zoom conference between a couple of old salty sea dogs. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week, it's amazing we haven't done this before, but we're going to talk about science.
I can't believe we haven't spoken about science before.
It's crazy. We're both scientists.
After a fashion.
And, science is certainly coming to the forefront at the moment. And it's sort of harder for people to be... I mean, it's amazing how much people still seem capable of being idiotic. But when it comes to science... But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. So obviously in the context of coronavirus.
Because everything's in the context of coronavirus at the moment.
It's our life now. So what's that? So we're going to some stuff about Las Vegas mayor talking about control groups. Donald Trump is telling people to inject themselves with disinfectants. So I saw Stephen, the latest one of these videos that I watched on YouTube, voiced by Stephen Fry, and at the end it has this joke, which is a correctly applied face mask could save thousands of lives, and it was they sort of photoshopped a face mark all over Donald Trump's face to shut him up.
Yes.
So yes, there's some incredible stuff going on. So yeah,
I think there's also, to add to this sort of questioning of science, the idea that scientific knowledge is permanent. So therefore, what was at the moment, we're living through a science experiment in some way. Like every day we're finding out new things. It's all new data. We have to adapt. We have to learn. But if you drag that out over longer periods, when people say things like, well, you used to be able to drink 55 cups of coffee a day or whatever I ate loads of sweets when I was a kid and I was fine. It's like that was then. Now we know more. We don't do that anymore. Yes. Type thing. That's allowed.
Yeah, the scientific method and the intrinsic paradigm shifts that attend such activities. Philosophy, a bit of philosophy. So there we go.
A bit of philosophy.
How's it going?
It is going well, I shall say. We are definitely getting into this whole mummy works all day, daddy's in charge of child and house, which is nice. I'm quite enjoying it, to be honest. So I've had a lovely uptake in work. Because all those people would be like, oh, you're remote. Oh, maybe when you get back then we can do this project with you. Now, because everyone's remote, it's not a problem anymore. Yes. So that's nice. And also my garden is flourishing, which is giving me some lovely satisfaction. And this week we've experimented with getting the child to record a hummus recipe for publishing on Restaurants Brighton. So she enjoyed herself. Sorry?
Hummus.
Do you not like hummus?
I don't like
pastes. Oh my God, you don't like hummus?
Hummus.
Sorry.
I just can't be bothered with it.
I'm not interested. You not like hummus?
I'm just not interested. I don't like to eat pastes. That's what children eat.
I'm sorry.
I don't care how garlicky they are.
But I'm not sure we can speak anymore. I never knew this about you.
Well, just a bit gross.
Oh my God.
In my opinion.
I need to process this information.
Episode of Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. I've heard gardens are at a real premium if you're in the property market now, right now, with everything that's going on. It's amazing the nonsense people put in print on local papers. That's really helpful, thanks. You're really giving us an insight
into the world. I've never been in this garden in Croatia with these plants at this time of year before. I've not seen the things that are in flower now. It's kind of like we've got orange and lemon trees are in full blossom, and we've got this thing called an ice plant that on further inspection seems like it's a bit of an invasive species. However,
it's called a nice plant.
It's not called nice.
It's called, what is it called?
An ice plant, not an orange.
A nice plant.
Or a nice.
Sounds good.
It's not going anywhere. Anyway, it has these very, very fluorescent pink flowers, which if you go...
Sounds like a nice plant.
Shut up.
In name
I'm not
and
forgiving
in nature.
you for your hummus.
Well, why don't you ask me how I am?
What about Marmite? What about
Why
Marmite?
don't you ask
what
me?
about Marmite? What about Marmite?
Yeah, I like Marmite, and I think the marketing campaign is one of these things that's worked its way into the social vernacular in a way that I always get annoyed by when people kind of cite the Marmite marketing as though it's some fact.
Oh my goodness. This maybe we'll talk. I think we've already learned that we must never speak of food.
Yeah, we knew this
I think
already.
we should stick to that rule. Yeah, okay. Anyway, Michael, how was your week?
Here's what I did. I sent off my care packages, finally. I had this idea. I had this pile of jigsaws, and I thought, what I'm going to do, I'm going to send some family and friends a jigsaw. And I'm also, while I'm at it, I'm going to send out these Grand Podcast mugs that I've had sitting there for ages. So I basically ended up with a huge sack of awkwardly wrapped Jigsaw Puzzle Plus mug box. And it took me ages and I thought I'd take them to the post office, but then I sort of was like, that's not going to work. And then I was looking at prices, and I finally found out Hermes, very affordable. You can upload a spreadsheet of addresses and it just works. And they collect it from your door, and it's that's what I've done. So in the next couple of days, people should get their jigsaws. So that it's one of those like ideas that has taken about 6 weeks to actually finish executing. So yeah, that's done, and nice. I continue to chip away at my various projects. Science.
Science.
What is science? Science is science is. So what's
science?
I expect myself to be good at talking about science, having an undergraduate degree in physics as I do. I did pull down some books the other day from the shelf to talk about, what were we talking about? Sharon wanted to know about astronomy stuff, like how we know what distant stars are made of, things like that. So I was kind of going, look, well, you do these like spectrographs, and then you know that the Doppler effect causes these lines to shift, but you know what roughly the lines are generally going to be because of what the elements are. And so it was quite nice to be able to pull down a book and show, like, actually my physics teacher, Mr. Ingham, gave me a copy of his book that he did, so I was able to pull that down and go, oh, look, here it is, here's the picture, and that's how you figure it out. So science, isn't it fascinating? It's like we're just expanding our senses and finding new ways to ask questions in order to understand the world. So you have your sort of intuitive understanding of the world, which is what you see and what you understand that people say and like your own observations. But a lot of science is kind of inventing machines and coming up with thought experiments that let you do more than just what you can do with your default senses. So microscopes, telescopes, spectrographs, X-ray machines, all those different things.
Electron microscopes.
electron microscopes and all that.
My daughter's best friend, he was very proud to tell me that his mummy is a scientist. Then my daughter went, my mummy's an engineer. Though I too, though I don't really consider, you said we're both scientists. Well, I don't really consider myself particularly a scientist. I did, because I did engineering, but then also, though I am a master of science,
well, there you
according
go.
to my master's degree. A mistress of science, I am.
So you're more of a scientist than me. I'm just a bachelor of science.
Well, one day, Michael, one day. Though I think physics trumps most things as a degree, doesn't it?
I mean, it's certainly
not
difficult.
wishing to inflate your head or anything.
I mean, I didn't do great.
Over compliment.
I didn't do great in my
it's
physics
hard.
degree. It is hard, and I had never learned how to learn things because it was sort of easy at school, and I never had to learn how to study. And then I was like, oh God, I don't know how to study. This procrastination is a real problem.
That is a weird thing. It's a slight digression, but when school is easy for you, I think there's stuff you just don't learn how to do.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I see some of that as like, I remember doing, on the subject of physics tests, because in Yugoslavia science was broken into physics and biology and chemistry from when you're 11. I remember doing a physics test, having done no prep, no revision, no nothing, getting 100%. And I was like, well, this is easy. And then being absolutely flabbergasted by the fact that I found this applied mathematics paper really hard. That's because you haven't done enough work, Ivanka. That's why. So, because at some point, that so-called intuitive or whatever, it just sort of makes sense in your head, ceases to work.
Yeah, and I always enjoyed, or it's just like, because I always enjoyed just even if I didn't know, you could sort of figure out like logically what was going on, and then at a certain point, it's like the things that I guess you could figure out logically what's going on, but it took the person that originally figured out logically what's going on 40 years to figure it out.
For you to think you're going to work it out at the beginning of an exam quickly. Oh, what? What was that question again? Oh, yes. One moment, please. Yes. Origin of the universe.
But the subject of science is, science, physics and engineering is one thing, but it's all about the old biology, microbiology at the moment, isn't it?
It is. It's all about the microbiology. But there's some methods that are, like there is that whole, this is what I want to find out, or I want to, some sort of hypotheses test, review, go back,
start. You've got to measure. You've got to have your control group, which you can measure, and
you can use Las Vegas
You can use Las Vegas as your control group to see how many people die if you alter this one variable that seems like a weird single variable to sacrifice 60% of your population in order to test something that you could probably find other ways, perhaps more humane ways. We're talking, of course, about the Las Vegas mayor who offered up her city to see how many people die without social distancing. Cool experiment, bro.
Because,
Carol
and then
Goodman.
in that article, she put...
Carolyn?
It was like, well, the restaurants will open up and then the restaurants can work out for themselves how to keep everyone safe. It's like,
individual responsibility. Why should we do anything as governors?
But I think, without mocking her too much, though, I think it is mock-worthy.
I don't think you can mock her too much. Because it's the one thing that's worse than someone who's anti-science is someone who's sort of misapplying their bad understanding of the principles of science. Like sometimes a little knowledge is... Yeah, I've just heard a word and now you're going to say that to try and sound like you're not out of your mind. Like a little knowledge is a bad thing, and there's some of that. Or you just have no knowledge and be Donald Trump and just have literally no knowledge.
I wish you would go and inject some, disinfectant.
Disinfectant.
Might do us all a favour.
Just give yourself some skin cancer and poison your blood. Good idea. That'll kill the virus. Ivanka, you told me this morning that Donald Trump had said that, and I was like, I just couldn't even believe it. I couldn't even believe that someone would say, someone that people are listening to. Like, you see the people that are listening, they're really listening.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he'd already done that, whatever it is, anti-malarial thing. He'd recommended some drug that I think it's called chloroquine or something. But anyway, I don't know. But he's just making shit up. On a serious note,
it's all serious.
With the proliferation of various news channels and various quality journalists and writing and reporting, science allows itself to be misinterpreted a little too much. So it's like there's been a study and people are getting fatigued. Like, coffee's bad for you, coffee's good for you. Have 1 cup of coffee a day. Don't have any cup of coffees a day. And then everyone gets all sort of starts treating science like, because some knowledge has changed, it means that they don't know what they're talking about, or they're sort of undermining their own findings. And science, in fact, all knowledge is always based on what we know today. This is what we know to be true based on the facts that we have available to us. And with varying levels of confidence. Like, I've been reading, on the subject of these wearing or not wearing face masks. There's a woman doctor I follow on Twitter who is clearly an expert in her field and quite she's a Oxford Don type person. And, she's the kind of person that organises a expert review of the evidence we have to date. And she's in a position to go, well, based on our general expertise, our ability to question, our expertise also in reviewing each other and questioning each other, and the data we have today, everyone should wear masks. And then maybe in 2 weeks' time, that advice will change. But when data is coming in so quickly and things are changing, you have to be able to, you have to make a call. You have to be able to make a recommendation with the information that you have.
Yeah, and the only word I would, I know I've said this on podcast, is I used to think that science was access to truth, and then I discovered that philosophically it can't be. So it's sort of like scientists can't really even talk in terms of truth. They have to talk in terms of, this is our best understanding of the facts, as you say. At this point, according to the facts we have available and the questions we've asked and the answers we've got, this is it. But, that's not the be-all and end-all of it. This isn't the Bible that gets finished and then now 2,000 years we've got to keep referring back to it and trying to make sense of it. This isn't an oracle. This isn't some mystical thing that's come from above that you keep studying the text of and maybe you learn more by studying the same text. No, it's a moving document that constantly shifts and changes. And and people don't really understand that. And I didn't understand it until, I'm like 20 and suddenly do a philosophy of science course. So it's not common knowledge that science isn't truth. But what has happened is that that's sort of like leached out in the form of, it's sort of opened the doors for a lot of pseudoscience and a lot of unfalsifiable claims being made by various snake oil salesmen or, disingenuous orators such as Trump and people like that can just say things that no one can ever really prove one way or the other, or like the sort of flat earth thing where you just cherry pick the facts to such an absurd degree in order to support your claim that that's not science. Science, it's bad science to cherry pick only the facts that fit your theory. And that's not to say that a lot of scientists might be susceptible to that, but that's why you have to kind of build up this body of knowledge and have people compare their results and things like that. And in the end, even though all scientists are people and they will resist their theory being falsified, if you're rational, if you're scientific about things, you're not allowed to do that.
There's a couple of things at the moment with this coronavirus. It is f***ing weird and f***ing scary if you overthink it. Frankly, you're much better off spending your day just, doing that day at a time, being in the moment, all that business. Because if you pick up on if you start overthinking any of the data available, there's some unpleasant things emerging. They're like, how long we're going to have to be in isolation, how likely a vaccine is, how long it might take, whether a vaccine is possible, how do we build immunity, what sort of, there's all sorts of things. This is not this is not a body of knowledge that I can contribute to in any useful way, really. So I think there's this one thing of wanting to seek solutions, wanting that confirmation bias of wicked, if I can inject with some disinfectant, then I'll be better. Like it's looking for solutions, and we all want to find them.
Well, it's naive, and it's like people are rational. Like we all want to find a rational answer. We want to find an easy answer.
Totally.
And like the trouble is, if you're naive about knowledge, about science, then you'll jump to conclusions like that, and you'll just do more harm than good.
And scare yourself or not, or falsely reassure yourself, and then put more people in danger. It's like all those things people share, send you on WhatsApp. I don't know about the older generation in your family, but we're getting much more stuff shared at us on WhatsApp now. But it's like early on there was this thing about gargling was going to help. It's like, does it have NHS written on it? No, then delete it. Is it pick?
Well, luckily my dad's an actual scientist, so there's not too much of that useful. Going around.
There was a couple of things I was thinking about earlier when we were talking about the, not working hard enough. There's a deep curiosity element that I think is essential for good scientists. Even at the point where they think they know something, to dig a bit deeper and be curious about that one little thing that didn't quite fit their data. And is there anything in that? There's also this thing about the peer-reviewed. Yes. The word peer, that the peer and the reviewed, it's like a bunch of other people working in a similar field with a similar set of skills are sitting here going, no, you're cool. That is not confirmation bias. That is, in fact, it looks the same to me as it does to you. And being open to that is one of the things that is hard from an ego point of view, I'm quite sure. I mean, none of us like to be wrong. Yes. But really, if you're trying to be scientific about something or approach it in any sciencey way, you have to be exposed to being wrong and being questioned.
Yes, you do. I think and you have to, like, a good scientist is not someone that avoids the little bit of data that doesn't fit with their conclusion. No, that is a bad scientist. Like, a good scientist is the one that's obsessed with that little bit of data that doesn't fit the rest of the curve. If that's not what you're doing, you're not doing science. You obviously haven't got the stomach for it. So please just leave it to people that do. But as you talk about peer review, and it does bring up this subject of how I would say it's possible that most science these days is like corporate research, and that can get difficult and weird. So if you want your project, your research grant or your project funded, I don't know the numbers at all, and I would need someone to tell me how much states are spending on this stuff, but a lot of the noise is coming from all this corporate research to kind of like prove some difference in how you make the coffee is. I don't know what they are, but there's a lot of disingenuous work being done in the under the scientific banner. And I'll tell you a story about a project I was actually involved in. It was like the one time I worked for like an out and out marketing company, and I was pretty shocked to see their marketing strategy for this sort of hair thinning shampoo, which was really they had this product that supposedly helps if you've got thinning hair, it helps to do something, and like straight away you should be like, that sounds like one of those things that's not real. But the marketing strategy was, we're going to come up with like a medical diagnosis of thinning hair and get that onto Wikipedia, and like put loads of effort into having our ideas presented as fact on Wikipedia and other places like that, so that people, in order to kind of put this idea that people need a solution to this, our solution to this problem kind of thing. And it was sort of like trying to hijack the tools of knowledge in order to promote a product, because that's where the money is. The money is in promoting products. So you get a lot of bad faith science.
Wow.
And often, it's very difficult to tell it from stuff that doesn't have some agenda, like corporate agenda.
I hadn't heard an example quite like that before, but I've done a research project, a user research project, qualitative user research project with science researchers, and you cannot pretend today in this world that things aren't dictated to by money. It's just, and it could be, but it's like anything, a scientist with a bit more charisma, a bit more oomph might be better at persuading that their research needs some investment. An organisation that has money for funding might pick, it's like, Bill and Melinda Gates pick, I don't know how they pick what they fund, but they've picked them.
Yes.
They've said that's what they're interested in, and so that's what they're funding. Then you've got the pharmaceutical companies who have, maybe built up a business around a particular disease or a particular area. And, so that's sort of like what gets funded and how is a little bit... Go on.
You did just spark, not to interrupt, but hold that thought.
Yeah.
What you did just spark that. Pharmaceutical companies, I heard this expressed really well by Nina Power, actually. Like, pharmaceutical companies they're not like researching into a particular illness necessarily. It's more like they've got this particular compound and then they sort of try and see what it might seem to fix. And they say, this is the thing it fixes. All the other things it does, they go on the side effects list and actually make up like 99% of its actual effects. And you market it based on this one thing that you think you can sell. Like, this is kind of really what pharmaceutical companies do, rather than... And unless unless we're talking about cancer research and those sorts of things, but like a lot of it is this. I've found this mushroom that makes you feel weird. Like, let's figure out how to sell this.
But getting into how and why pharmaceuticals, there's lots of dodginess in the pharmaceutical industry. Definitely, a lot of controlling prices, a lot of all sorts of unpleasantness, but. That being said, and a lot of how good the research is will be based on the quality of the scientist.
So it all comes back to people, absolutely.
So I've listened to a couple of podcasts and interviews with particularly scientists now who are working on creating vaccines, and some of there's this sort of sciencey, buzzy news coming out. And I think that one thing that seems to be clear is that even if a person is working for a big organisation with shareholders, with financial pressures, with speed pressures, it's like a good scientist will endeavour to do good science wherever they are and encourage, like with this corona vaccine race, because it is a race, but it's a race for humanity, not a race necessarily against each other. And maybe there's a particular bias with the interviews that I listened to, but it made me feel good to know that like the woman working at that German firm that Donald Trump tried to buy is fully focused on coming up with a vaccine, not on coming up with some marketing shit that will persuade people she's come up with it's not the... So I think there is this, a good scientist is a good scientist, regardless of who's paying for their work.
And they're interested in... it's not like just because you work for something you turn into that corporation. You're still sort of trying to find... Yeah, we see it in the films. The scientists going,
we see it in the movies.
Figured it out, but don't use it for that. No, we're going to use it for this. Pew! That was my impression of Donald Trump.
That's exactly how it goes.
Like any human activity, personality comes into it. Like people
Absolutely.
that are charming, people that have charisma are going to get the funding, they're going to get the money, they're going to get the people interested in what they're doing.
Or or connected, or just really good at putting themselves out there, or whatever.
And it's rare that one of those big famous scientists, your Stephen Hawking, your Albert Einstein, wasn't a good scientist, but also really good at PR. Like Newton, I always say it kind of goes back, like the ones that we all know the names of, the famous ones that everyone's like, wow, that's the biggest genius ever. It was good. It was really good. I don't want to take that away, but you wouldn't be seeing him like that unless he was also really good at marketing himself. Because there's loads of other scientists that came up with loads of interesting stuff that you read the name in the textbook and you've never heard of them. And they actually did something really clever. But I think this idea that like, human power can possibly override the power of nature to assert its will, the power of the actual reality of actual truth. It's interesting to see Trump still clawing away at that kind of like, he still wants to kind of keep his reality distortion field intact. And it's just really interesting to see the desperate measures he takes in order to sort of to protect it, and the ideas he comes up with.
I think, but this is all the psychology of fear. It's either fear or the fear on one hand, sort of extreme arrogance on the other hand. But it's like this idea that we are subject to this.
Something beyond our control.
I find it I was going to say laws of nature. That we can't even bother. What? But we are so good. We can make stuff. We can make nanobots that crawl through your veins and clear out the build-up. Why can't we fix climate change? Or why can this tsunami still come? It's like, well, it can. Yeah. So where did this virus come from? It had to have come from people. Somebody must have made it.
Let's talk about where the virus came from. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, because it's like, and the thing is, like, with some of the science of the scientific hypotheses, because that's all they are at the moment, really, is like of where it's come from. I mean, they're based on, there's a difference between a scientific hypothesis, and that might be the difference between a scientific hypothesis and you made up for talking to your mates down the pub. It's like, when you look at this sort of, or being paranoid in front of the internet and looking at things on YouTube, it's like when I watched that documentary the other night, it talked about the fact that, one of the reasons bats are really good at spitting out viruses at us is that because there was an explanation that was based, that seemed infinitely plausible. It's something I couldn't have made up myself by reading comics. It was, probably comics would be a bad example, so watching random YouTube videos. But it's like, yes, okay, so your hypothesis is based on other data points that you have, that to be true. There's anchors. But if your data points for your conspiracy theory are those Chinese people, they've got nothing better to do but come up with a virus that they send. It's like I don't even know with some of these conspiracy theories. I mean, who could be asked to implement these things that they're coming up with? It's like that's the.
I haven't seen I haven't seen the conspiracy theories so much as, but what makes me uncomfortable is the way that unpleasant people like latch onto the things that support their own kind of beliefs, and it's like, it's a wet market. It came from a wet market in China, and they sort of like to latch on. They like to say that because it sort of like supports their idea that foreigners are like dirty or not hygienic or something, and then those are the things that they propagate. And I think it's like they're cherry picking the information based on like their emotional response to it and whether or not it supports their xenophobia and sort of like their various bigotries. And that's where you sort of go, well, look, there's a lot of factors here, but you're just banging on about the one that makes you feel like it's okay for you to be being quite racist right now. Like to have these beliefs about like other, and Chinese people are the other, like for so many people. And also people don't like bats, do they? Some people do. I don't know.
No.
But I haven't
Bats
really.
are quite freaky though.
But it's almost like this has come out. It was like it doesn't really matter where it came from, as much as we need to figure out how to stop it. Like if you just obsess with pointing the finger at someone, then you're not doing the important work of actually figuring out how we're going to get past this. And that's where I kind of have to filter those people out that are going to just do finger pointing and stuff.
Yeah, where it came from is only relevant if that helps us work out what to do about it, or it gives us some sort of really, oh my God, there was another American politician, she was like, because it was COVID-19, that how could we still be wrong, not know when this is COVID-19? I mean, we've had COVID 1 to 18 to learn from, sort of not being able to join up the fact that it was named after the year it showed up, not for fuck's sake. But I just want to. I think just to add one more thing, like diseases can come from. You can sort of say, oh well, we could change it by not allowing the Chinese to have wet markets anymore. But because you sort of think that's dirty. But what about this? Like giving animals antibiotics in huge quantities. Like, you don't think that's dirty, but sorry, that's what's going to cause the next super virus. It's going to be like antibiotic resistant bacteria, isn't it? And then who are you going to say is dirty then? Like, no, because you think you're being extra clean by kind of putting these drugs and, sanitizing everything. You're not. You're just kind of creating an environment in which something more powerful can evolve. Anyone who talks about that sort of clean, unclean, and doesn't recognise that sheds full of almost featherless chickens living one on top of each other is in any way civilised. It's outrageous that we ever thought that was okay. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, on what level of
we're disconnected from it and we can't see it, and like people are just happy to stick their fingers in their ears because they want to fry some chicken up, and it's like, sorry, but it's going to come from that industry next if it hasn't. It's just going to. Well,
that's where that was the thing. It's like bird flu and swine flu are results of the fact that we create conditions for viruses to bounce around, and that's why this is what I learned in this documentary, because I'm an expert now because I watched the documentary, but I felt informed by the documentary. But it's like bats live in these huge groups and they can bounce viruses around each other, and then we artificially create that same thing when we do mass chicken farming and mass pig farming. So it's like but I quite enjoy it. I have to say that I quite enjoy sitting in my garden watching bats fly around of an evening, because we see them, because they flap their little wings like crazy things compared to birds. Birds just sort of float around on the breeze, but bats are like, get things, move.
It's a shame that evolution is just a theory. So, how can we talk about a virus evolving in conditions that we've created when evolution is just a theory? And I believe it was created in a lab because that's for some reason more plausible than a sort of natural process that comes from stuff that if you just go into one of these places, I'm sure it would, you'd instantly be like, ugh, this doesn't feel right. I think if people just didn't do things that didn't feel right, things would be better.
Yeah, that would be, It's like, it's not just not don't do unto others. It's also like, just don't do things that just feel wrong.
Feel gross.
If it looks a bit gross, it feels a bit gross.
If you're scared of people seeing footage of this, maybe don't do it. Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com. You can subscribe, as I've said already. But hey, guess what? This is media. Now you have to listen to our stuff. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter, where I pick up all sorts of wonderful tidbits about what Donald and Ivanka Trump are up to.
Lovely.
Lucky me.
You can find me, well, I'm at Michael Forrest on Twitter, and come and sign up for my happiness tracking thing. Get a book, get my little book. I did spend some time on it, and it's pretty rainbow cover, so come and get it, tracking thing, because that's what most of my energy is going in right now, and I'm trying to kind of help more people see the world the way I do it and use the tools I use, and hopefully you can be living your life on a passive income like me. You can be the same
Once
as
you're
me.
happy. Way. Something to look forward to, something to aspire to.
Yes.
Be
okay,
more
anyway.
like Michael.
Well, don't be like me. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Next week, every Tuesday this comes out. I thought I should start saying that. Comes out Tuesday, UK time, sometime during the day.
At some point on a Tuesday.
Yes, that's when it comes out. All right. See you next
Excellent.
week. Bye.
Bye, 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 bye.